Just one day away now from this year's World's Strongest Man, and we are continuing with our Meet the Athlete series, episode 3. This time we are looking at Team Europe. Just 4 of these episodes this year. We're already on to episode 3, and you've collectively put Europe into one group. What can you tell us about the European athletes?
Well, first off, should we quickly recap who's in this group?
So we have 8 athletes from Team Europe, starting off with Oskar Zielkowski, Rauno Heinle, Ivers Schmaukstelis, Pavlo Kordiaka, Nick Camby, Paro Dwyer, Andre Foitu, the youngest athlete in the contest, and finally Adam Rakowski. 8 athletes, Auntie Liz, tell us about them.
So starting with our quick facts then, this group of athletes have 44 international wins, by far the most out of any group of athletes. However, it should be noted that 25 of them belong to Ivers Schmaukstelis.
Yeah, Ivers has won more contests than most people in their combined career.
Together, yeah.
He's a fantastic athlete. He's been competing regularly in Europe for a long time. And he's just one of those guys that constantly gets on podiums, wins international shows. However, when it comes to World's Strongest Man, he has only made the final 1 time.
Yeah, and following on from that, these 8 athletes have 12 World's Strongest Man appearances between them, so not particularly experienced at the World's Strongest Man, and just 2 finals, and those belong to Ivers and Pavlo. Ivers is the most experienced man at this competition, having competed there 6 times before, and Pavlo is the most successful when he came 6th in the final last year. And out of these 8 athletes, half of them are first-timers. That's Oskar, Andre, Adam and Nick Camby.
Interesting that we also have the oldest and the youngest athlete from Team Europe also.
Yeah, so Rauno is 41, he's the oldest athlete this year, and as you already said, Andre Foitu at 22 is the youngest.
So diving into event number 1, the Webster Stones, how are these athletes looking on these?
So obviously not every single athlete has done an event like this. So for the likes of Adam Rakowski, for example, we don't have a lot of data to go on because you can't always just take a farmer's, can you? Because it's quite
Certainly
different.
Not, yeah.
And a good example of that is someone like Rauno. Like, he notoriously has bad grip, but if there's going to be a grip event, this is the one he wants because he has done okay on these types of walking stones before.
Well, when you look at Rauno's history when it comes to farmers, it's very, very bad.
On
this event, he does pick up points. He's not going to be winning this type of event, but I can see Rauno getting himself in mid-table and picking up some points. Much, much better event for a guy like Rauno than a standard farmer's walk or a frame carry would.
Ivers Schmaukstelis came joint 3rd on this as recently as Europe's Strongest Man a couple of weeks ago, and Andre Foitu won the event. Properly blindsided us, didn't he? Because he was one of those we had no data for.
No data, but he told me training had been going very well. He was quietly confident and he backed it up. It was great to see. I actually think Andre is going to do very well in the groups. He's got some good events.
Yeah. So last year, Pavlo Kordiaka had such incredible group events for him. I don't feel that's the case this year, unfortunately. Starting kind of with this event where he tends to come mid-pack.
Yeah, the last year he was unbelievable. He won his group. He looked fantastic. We thought going into it he was going to be a major threat. I feel this year he's going to have to get a good group because it isn't the best set of events for him when it comes to the group stages. So moving on to the Deadlift Ladder. Now, in my opinion, this group of European athletes are not the best when it comes to deadlift. Let's take Rauno out of that. Rauno is a fantastic deadlifter and he needs big, big points. If he wants to be getting in with a shot of getting to the final, getting to the stone off, he needs maximum points here. However, when you look at the other athletes, I don't see someone out of any of these that's going to be picking up maximum points on a deadlift. They're going to need to be making sure tactics are good, getting through as many bars as quick as possible, and trying to pick off points against other athletes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, Parr did really well to finish the deadlift ladder, I felt, at Europe's. Yep. Ivers also wasn't too far behind, along with Nick Camby. So, you know, some good performances in there. But like you say, when you throw in the likes of Adam Bishop, Mitchell Hooper, Tom Stoltman, it's going to be tougher.
Yeah, even other names that weren't at Europe, so Trey Mitchell, and Evan Singleton, a Bobby Thompson, a Matt Ragg. There's a lot of big deadlifters that these guys weren't up against at Europe's Strongest Man. So I feel it's going to be an event they need to make up points elsewhere and just do damage control on this one.
So we said probably not the best deadlifting group, but they are a very good group of loaders.
Yeah, particularly Pavlo. This is where Pavlo needs to get maximum points again if he wants to get himself into the final. He's a very fit athlete, very fast. He'll need big points here. I think the fact that it is going to be a long loading event, 3 sandbags over the steeplechase, they've got to cover a huge amount of distance. This extra sandbag really makes this challenging. And I think that fitness of an athlete like Pavlo, also someone like Adam,
Yeah.
he's a fit athlete. I've seen him do very well at OSG Europe last year.
Oscar's good at loading too.
Oscar's decent. So this is an event where they do have the opportunity to pick back up points where they might lose on the deadlift.
Yeah. So during the loading event in the heats last year, both Ivers and Rauno were second in their group, so they both performed really well. Pavlo was the fastest out of all 30 athletes on that loading race, so I expect him to do well. Par is going to be group dependent, I feel, and probably the same for Andre Foytu as well. He came fifth when they did a sandbag steeplechase in the World Tour Finals last year.
Moving on to the Viking Press, how are these athletes looking at this one?
Andre Foytu recently won it at Europe's Strongest Man, so that was really impressive. We knew he was a great log lifter. That was the first time we saw him do the Viking Press. Nick Camby came joint third on this event. Now, we knew as an under 105, Nick was always great overhead, yeah, but you don't always know how that's going to translate when they sort of grow and go into the opens.
Again, I don't want to be talking negative of Pavlo, because Pavlo is great overhead. We've seen how good he is on a log.
The log ladder.
Log ladder, he was
yeah.
unbelievable. He's great at axle, but he can use that split jerk technique on those events. On the Viking Press, he's not done so well, where it's more of a push press.
Yeah.
This is probably the worst overhead that Pavlo would want in a competition.
Probably, and he's still not bad at it.
Not
we should
at all,
point out
yeah.
he's a mid-pack kind of guy when it comes to Viking Press. I feel Rauno needs to do damage limitation, and it's going to be very group dependent for him. Yeah. Ivers is decent as well.
Ivers, again, he just grinds out reps and he picks up points. But yeah, the guys to look out for here, definitely Nick Camby and Andre Foytu. So moving on to the car walk, and again, I feel this isn't the strongest group of athletes when it comes to this type of event.
I feel like a couple of negative Nancy's, but no, I know what
it's
you
not
mean.
being negative, Nancy. You have to be honest with what we've got data to go off, and none of them are particularly amazing at this type of event.
No, they're not the super fast guys like Rob Kearney, Mitch, Evan, etc. We've had some decent results. Like Nick Camby came second on it at Europe's Strongest Man, which again, I'm really impressed with Nick Camby.
Nick surprised everyone at Europe. And he's a great athlete. Again, I think in the right group he can score big points. You get put into the wrong group, he's going to be in trouble. There's none of like who I would put as the top 4 or 5 on this type of event.
No.
However, it's very unlikely that you're going to be against all of the best guys when it comes to this event. So it's about picking up points. Nick, very capable in a good group. Same with Pavlo. Pavlo has had some very solid performances, did well at World's Strongest Man a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he won the event in his group when he was in a group of Martins Lisser. So we know Pavlo's more than capable of doing well. And then there's a couple of guys, so like Adam, for example, he's really good at yoke, but we haven't seen him on a car walk yet.
Sure.
Andre Foytu is really good at yoke, but that was his first time using a car walk at Europe's Strongest Man. So for some, it might just be a lack of experience, because outside of the Giants Live and World's Strongest Man world, you don't see it that often.
One thing I'll say for athletes that haven't had experience on a car walk, when it comes to a super yoke, you are focusing mainly on the side-to-side movements. With a car, you also have forwards and backwards rocking, which throws people a little bit more. The core strength involved to control the car is greater than that of a yoke. So it's really important to just understand that stability and get that right. If you get that right, then it's essentially the same event. Finally, in the events, we have the stone off. What have you got for us on the stone off, Auntie Liz?
Some interesting facts, I feel. So starting off with Rauno, he last year, him and Brian actually tied for the record for the most times the stone has been lifted in a stone off with 11 reps. So if he can get to a stone off, it's a great event for Rauno.
Stubborn mule as well, Rauno.
Yeah, he is. It's all sheer grit and stubbornness. Ivor Schmutzlis has won Atlas Stones in 12 different competitions. So he's got a great track record. Yeah. The most notable was in the 2021 Worcester Dubai. He was up against some great guys there, and that's a 10 Atlas Stone run. It's really tough. Pavlo Kordiaka, he has some up and down results on stones, but we know he's good in the stone off. In 2022, unfortunately, he didn't get through because he was up against Maxime Boudreau, but he did lift the stone 10 times. Yeah. Nick Camby was very good at Atlas Stones as an under 105, but we haven't seen those great results for him yet as an open weight competitor. We haven't seen do a stone off, so he's kind of mid-pack when it comes to a stone run, But that doesn't, so is Rauno.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you can't do it as an endurance event back and forth.
It's a good point to kind of get across, is a stone off is not the same as a stone run. It's not about speed. You just need to kind of pace yourself and be able to keep lifting that stone over and putting the pressure on your opposition. So you don't necessarily need to be like the super fast stone lifter. You just need to be able to keep lifting it.
And then finally, this is the event I'm most worried for Andre Foytu, because he's not had the best stone results. But again, that has always been in a run. Maybe when it's just a case of back and forth, maybe it's a better event for him. I hope so, because he's got some really good events here.
I think he could definitely get himself into a stone off in any group, to be honest. He's got some very, very good events, as you say. Can he be good enough to get through on a stone off? We'll have to see whether he has the advantage.
Who you're up against.
World's Strongest Man can do funny things to athletes. Sometimes it breaks them and they kind of, fall apart. Other times they raise their level. It makes it exciting. What we're trying to give you here is what people have done in the past. But coming into World's Strongest Man, they're all in good shape. They're all ready to fight hard. Who knows what's going to happen? So we move on to the finals events. We start off with the Giants Medley, the yoke into the frame carry.
Yeah, and, there's some guys that I think are going to be really hard to beat. Mitch Hooper and Evan Singleton jump out the most to me, but also Tom Stoltman too. However, I do think people like Ivers, Pavlo, Nick Camby and Andre could all do decently at this event.
Yeah, this is one of those events, you kind of said the big names and then it comes down to who's in the final, essentially.
Yes.
There's certainly... The thing with Strongman is we don't know who's in the final.
No.
So we're kind of making things up here as you go along. It all comes down to who gets there. But based on what we've seen in the past, most of them are decent. None of them are exceptional.
No, and then there's going to be guys that are probably going to struggle with the frame, and I'm thinking of Rauno and also Adam. He's had some up and down results when it comes to grip events. So then we go into the max axle, and we do have some interesting results here. So Nick Camby, as an under 105, held the world record, still holds it, I believe at 190 kilos on the max axle event. Pavlo Cordiaca, we don't have any data for, but you think he's...
I think he'll be very good at an axle. I really do. I think this type of overhead suits him much, much more than the Viking Press in the heats. I think if he can get to the final, he has some good events in there, and this could be one of them. He's very explosive. He's got great flexibility, as does Nick Camby. Both of them are technically good lifters. And when it comes to an axle, we've seen that that's very, very beneficial.
Adam lifted 190 at last year's European Giants on a max axle, so that's good.
Very good.
And Paro Dwyer, a few years ago at the Strongman Classic 2021, he did 170 on a max axle. Now that is the opening weight here, but I do believe there's going to be maybe half the field miss it.
Yeah, again, I think an axle is a good overhead for Par. So,
yes,
whether he can get to the final is a big if, but much better for him on that type of overhead than some of the others.
Yeah.
So we move on to the max height throw with the keg. It's 15 kilos, as high as possible. The bar will keep going up. Now, Oscar will like this one. We haven't spoken much about Oscar, but he's a very good thrower. Recently came second, or joint second, at the Arnold's UK, and that was behind only Thor Bjornsson.
Yeah, so great event for Oscar in there. And then also Adam, he's had some good results on throwing. So for these guys, it's nearly always in a series. That's all we've really got to go off of.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be one of those interesting events. It again comes down to who gets in the final. Some of these athletes could cause problems for some of the big names when you're talking about winning overall. These type of athletes, if they do make the final, can get between people.
Yeah, definitely. Pavlo Cordiaca we should talk about as well. Again, we've only seen him do a series, but he's very, very good at a series, as is Ivers and as is Rauno. Now, Rauno did the max height throw at the Arnold UK and missed the opener. I don't think that would be the case here, where it's 10 kilos lighter.
Different weight, different implement. We've seen him do very well on keg throws in a series. Be interesting to see how height makes a difference. But for me, when we're talking about the Europeans, it's the two Polish lads and Pavlo that really stand out. So, Conan's Circle. Now, I said the events in the heats are not good for Pavlo. But as you can kind of start to see, the events in the final, much, much better for him. This, potentially the best for him.
Absolutely.
Conan Circle, he's won in competitions multiple times. He's always up in the big points. And again, if he gets to the final, this could be big points for him.
Yeah, definitely. So he holds the world record on the Giants Live setup, which he set at Europe's Strongest Man last year. He also won the Conans in his group last year. Parr was second to him as well, ahead of the likes of Tom Stoltman and Bobby Thompson, who's surprisingly good at Conans too.
Yeah, these European athletes are exceptionally good when it comes to this type of an event.
I feel we have it more in Europe than we do in other parts of the world.
It's been used in a number of Champions Leagues over the years, and obviously was in a lot of competitions going back, particularly in places like Poland. They used to love doing this type of event.
Also, Adam, he's very good at Conans, has done it multiple times at Strongman Champions League shows.
As I said.
Yeah.
Polish and...
There you go, he's ticking every box.
So as we mentioned about the deadlift in the heats, Rauno Hainler is the standout deadlifter from Europe. The rest of the athletes much more mid-table. I think the 360 kilos for reps in the final will be tough for most of these guys.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is an event that Rauno could legitimately win in the final up against anyone else there.
Absolutely. The other person I'll give mention to is Para Dwyer. Deadlift is an event he's steadily improved. He's a very solid deadlifter. Reps, I think, is good for him. He's not going to beat the absolute top deadlifters, but he could pick up points. And then we finish with the Atlas Stones, aren't he, Liz?
Yeah, and Ivers, again, he has the best track record when it comes to stones. Like, part of that is because he's competed so often and he's so experienced with different setups. Like, nothing really phases Ivers. He has seen and done it all when it comes to every type of
Just
event.
experience. He's used lots of different kit in lots of different countries. He trains with different people, and that experience of using different kit is very beneficial. He's competed in lots of different climates, so you cope with the moisture changes, the ability to kind of figure out equipment. That is very beneficial. There's some great stone lifters on their own stones, but if you can go to competition time and time again and prove it, that's when you start to get to elevate that level of being a great stone lifter.
So there you go. That's our European athletes done.
Do you think we see any winners from Europe?
What?
From the Team Europe.
What, for the title, the overall title? No.
No,
no, I don't personally.
I don't this year. I mean, there's some great athletes, a couple of athletes that maybe could make the final.
I think Ivers could make top 5. I really do. I feel, depending on his group, if he can get out of it in shape, I'm starting to believe that Ivers, the more I look at it, the better it's looking for him.
I would agree with you, and I also think Pavlo can if he can get through the group.
Yes.
The big issue for Pavlo is the groups. It's a two-sided competition, World's Strongest Man. It's like two separate comps. So you've got the heats and the final. Now, for me, looking at the groups, the events in the heats, not good for Pavlo. The events in the final, however, much better. He has some events he could really get some good points in. So if he can squeeze into the final, which hopefully for him he's in a good group and he can squeeze through, I do think he can do damage, but it's going to depend on who's in his group and is he capable to get through with the events that are set in the heats. So that is our Team Europe video, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it brings you a bit of an insight into some of these athletes, especially the athletes we're not so familiar on. One more video to go. It's the Team Rest of the World, which is a terrible sounding name.
It doesn't roll off the tongue, does it?
However, there are some very good athletes to come in that one. I hope you're enjoying the series, guys. Please remember to like, share and subscribe to the channel as it helps us out loads, and we'll catch you in the next one.